Hey everyone, Pugs here with two new reviews for y'all. Today, I'm covering some better-known Season 6 episodes, Not Normal and Gone. I'm pretty excited because I've definitely got a lot to say about both of these episodes, and I think that, thinking of the written reviews of these episodes, these are also two reviews that will benefit from being revisited in this video format, since I can expand on a lot of the things I had said back then. So all around, I think this is going to be a fun review we've got going on today. As always, thank you to everyone who's watching my video today. I really appreciate y'all so much. And now, let's just get right into it. I find Not Normal to be such an interesting episode. This is an episode that takes a very core aspect of the show, which is SpongeBob's idiosyncratic nature, his oddness and weirdness, and removes it. And listen, I'm not saying this to mean that it's a bad thing. No, I am genuinely saying that this is an interesting topic for a plot. Firstly, it's a unique setup. Other episodes aren't going down this route. Secondly, the idea of removing or altering a core show element is already inherently intriguing. And lastly, this episode is rife for a whole lot of commentary. A lot of soapbox commentary, if you catch my drift. So that's definitely going to be something that I'll discuss. It's also kind of ironic that this episode has such an interesting and unique premise, because while I think that this makes this episode stand out, it's undoubtedly overshadowed by its sister episode, which is understandable. I don't think this episode is forgotten. I definitely have seen people discuss it, but maybe not as much as I think it should be. SpongeBob in the first scene of Not Normal is pretty cute, running around and simply enjoying his morning, as he should. Unfortunately for him, Squidward does not like this. Now, before anyone says anything, I'm not actually annoyed at Squidward. In the context of the show, his reaction is typical and still entertaining. All I'm saying is that he's a rude-ass motherfucker for making SpongeBob think that there's something wrong with him for just minding his own business in a flamboyant manner. Damn, that just made me sound like I'm calling Squidward homophobic. No, I'm calling him ableist. That's also a joke. But that does lead me right into the big soapbox elephant of today, which is that this episode is, to me, so clearly an allegory for the experiences of the neurodiverse, especially for those with autism or ADHD, but also I think that this is a story that many different kinds of people can relate to. But like with SpongeBob's crushing realization that he's not quote-unquote normal, I can see me and my ADHD and probably autism having self. And I think that this is a pretty cool thing for this episode to do. Like, this little theme is made even more apparent by the Journey into Normality videotape that SpongeBob watches, which is a very unnerving video with the constant smiling and the guy only having a name tag for his personal belongings, which is itself a commentary on society, I'd say. I mean, this tape is literally just brainwashing SpongeBob into thinking he needs to achieve the capitalist ideal of suburban home ownership and corporate work, and I've got a whole lot I could say about that, but I'll leave it for today. Alright, but finally moving on off the soapbox now, because this episode takes away SpongeBob's weirdness, or really just morphs it into a different form, because normal SpongeBob is quite unnerving, at the very least, this episode has a very odd quality to it, like something is off, which kind of makes it fitting that this episode is paired with Gone, but I can talk about that later. Anyway, unlike an episode like Spongehenge, we know exactly what is off here, just from the very first scene of SpongeBob acting normal. Tom Kenny did a really great job at making SpongeBob sound so off-putting here, removing all enthusiasm from his voice. SpongeBob turning his fry cook job into an office job is pretty funny to me, and it's also rife full of commentary, especially once we see him start to print Krabby Patties, and once that backfires on him since Krabby Patties need to be made with love and passion, things SpongeBob no longer has because of his quest to be quote-unquote normal, making him an inauthentic portrayal of himself. This reminds me a lot of Selling Out. SpongeBob's normalified house is really neat looking, and I love how Squidward does a whole slap take because of it. I also think that SpongeBob's slow design change is pretty cool too. It's so silly looking. When Normal Bob, as I've taken to calling him, meets Patrick, I like how this interaction was kind of like a reverse of Patrick Smartpants. I mean, of course it's not exactly like that since Normal Bob is, well, normal and not a super genius like Patrick was in that episode, but it's the same kind of change of dynamics in their friendship as one friend loses a lot of their zest for the silly. Also, I just want to say that I totally noticed the music from Krusty Krab training video in the background. My ears are like hawks when it comes to things from that episode, let me tell you. Oh, and back to the Patrick Smartpants comparison for a second, but I love how just like Patrick in that episode, SpongeBob starts roasting Squidward over lacking the new quality he's got now. Squidward stays being this show's butt monkey, and I love it. And also, if you can't healthily poke fun at each other in a friendship, healthily being the operative word here, are y'all really friends? I kid, no need to leave the think piece in the comments. Normal Bob goes to Patrick because he's determined to become the sponge he used to be, and this calls to mind the part that I liked from Stanley S. SquarePants. I found the montage of SpongeBob trying to act weird again pretty entertaining, and I love how strange the behaviors are, just as Patrick said. I also like how in the end it didn't actually work. I feel like this is part of the commentary of this episode, whether that commentary is intentional or not. I liken it to masking, something autistic folks are familiar with. I also think of it like code switching. But anyway, it makes me think of how a lot of autistic folks, myself included, mask so much that we kind of lose touch with who we are without the mask. This is especially true for anyone diagnosed later in life, or anyone who's realized they were autistic later in life. Just something to think about. Since this is a SpongeBob SquarePants episode, it of course cannot end with the kind of depressing ending of SpongeBob realizing he may be forever changed because of trying to fit into the box society created for him, so he gets scared right back into his strange sponginess by normal Squidward. Normal word, if you will. I thought this was a pretty great brick joke. Y'all know I love a good brick joke. And normal Squidward does look quite odd. I wonder how they ended up bringing him back to his usual self. That's something I do a lot. Wonder about what happens outside of the camera, especially because this show is episodic. What can I say? I think too much about a show about a talking yellow sponge. Not Normal is a fun little episode with a surprisingly serious and poignant social commentary, which I appreciated a lot. Like, the episode tackling this theme just works. This show is perfect for a commentary like this, and this show does not often tackle issues like this, so color me impressed. While the episode is not particularly funny, it is very fun to watch, and I enjoy it all the way through. Also, the plot is very interesting. I feel like it's underrated, or at least it lacks acknowledgement, which is sad to see. All of this is why I'm putting this episode in my amazing tier, where it comes in with a score of 9.1 out of 10. Do I dare call Gone an infamous episode? I feel like that word doesn't fit quite right. It's a decently known episode with a notorious ending. I guess that would be more accurate. I know the popular consensus on this episode is not positive, but I think that is entirely because of the ending, though I've seen some people not care as much about the rest of the episode, so I guess we shall see if my opinion matches these thoughts. One thing I'll say is that if you've been watching this channel for some time, there's a good chance you'll be able to guess what I think about this episode, but if you can't predict it, don't worry because I'm literally about to tell you right now. Okay, let's start with this. The episode I can compare Gone the most to is Spongehenge, because the whole first 8 to 9 minutes of this episode, amazing crafting of unsettling atmosphere, like literally this is so good. Spongehenge more leans into the strange and odd nature of the atmosphere, while this episode leads more into a horror direction, but both approaches work excellently. Also, this episode leans into its atmosphere with a much better inclusion of humor than Spongehenge did, so that's absolutely an improvement. Even the title card of Gone pulls us right in, with the words being far back on the empty screen. I also like how this episode is very slow burn with its creation of the horror and unsettling atmosphere. The fact that the episode plays things for laughs is one of the reasons why it's more of a slow burn. Gone is an episode with a very, very simple plot, and it works. SpongeBob wakes up to find that everyone in Bikini Bottom is gone. That's the plot for the entire episode until the very end, and this episode runs with it very well. I love how it takes SpongeBob a bit of time to realize that something is off, but there are plenty of clues for us watching, especially as SpongeBob walks through Bikini Bottom and there are cars crashed and tipped over and stuff, and when SpongeBob leaves the Krusty Krab and Mr. Krabs' office door opens with some great audio editing with the creaking and music. I just love how creepy that part is, especially once it's extended with SpongeBob returning home and seeing that Squidward's door is unlocked too. There's just a very palpable horror atmosphere here, like it really feels like something awful has happened here in Bikini Bottom, and especially as the episode goes on, it deals with the existential horror of SpongeBob being the only person left. There are very few episodes that can pull this kind of horror atmosphere off, and Gone is one of them. One thing I also find impressive about Gone is how it manages to be extremely SpongeBob-centric, given that he is the only character we see for almost the entirety of the episode, but it does this without ever getting stale, at least to me. I think the episode is able to do this because it still gives SpongeBob things to do, and it introduces quote-unquote characters for SpongeBob to bounce off of, even if they're very clearly figments of SpongeBob's imagination. Like, there's the Patrick Meat Puppet, which was hilariously creepy, and there's the Bodie, who doesn't even talk, but SpongeBob still manages to interact with it hilariously. And then, of course, we've got SpongeBob having his prototypical mimic madness moments, where he pretends to be all the people he knows. So really, this episode was just an opportunity for Tom Kenny to flex, but seriously, it's impressive how they managed to keep us, or at least me, engaged and laughing, even though there's literally only one character. And while I'm on this topic, let me just say that the humor is pretty good in this episode. One other joke I liked was when SpongeBob was saying, "Where did everybody go?" And it turns out he's just repeating himself instead of it echoing. Jokes like that are always so funny to me, I don't know why. Eventually, SpongeBob grows exceedingly paranoid of his new best friend Bodie. Like, the entire sequence of SpongeBob talking to Meat Puppet Patrick, who warned him about Bodie watching, all the way through to SpongeBob hitting the bus with an axe, is just so freaking funny to me. Poor dude has lost his entire mind, because that's what happens when you're completely isolated. While comedic, this part of the episode is also the climax of the horror atmosphere that's been building up, so it serves to release some of that tension. That is why, at the end of it, it coincides with us finally receiving an explanation for why SpongeBob is the only one in Bikini Bottom. Too bad the episode ends with everyone still missing, giving us one of the most depressing episode endings this side of Spongehenge, am I right? Yeah, I know. Okay. We all know this isn't the actual ending of the episode. No. We get the explanation of everyone's disappearance, but it's shit. Like, I'm just gonna say it, it's shit. Taking a page from the book of Whatever Happened to SpongeBob, this episode turns out to be quite mean-spirited. The reason everyone was gone was because it was the annual No SpongeBob Day. And not just that, but they were enjoying themselves so much that they stayed for weeks. Okay. One question. Why? Like, actually, why? What even was the reason? This is just extremely mean-spirited. I don't even know where to start. Let's start with the fact that SpongeBob's literal best friend was on this trip, and then says to SpongeBob's face that sometimes SpongeBob's personality is too annoying for him? Okay, I'm sorry, but the fuck? Maybe it's because I'm fresh off giving an autism analysis to the previous episode, but are y'all being for real right now? This hits way too close to home for me. Like, this feels actually insulting. Let's not mention characters like Mr. Krabs and Sandy being there either, which are similarly insulting. The fact that all of these characters apparently hate SpongeBob so much that they made an entire day for it could have been funny, maybe, if their actions didn't literally amount to psychological torture for SpongeBob, because that's fucked up, seriously. I cannot see what's supposed to be funny here, or like, I think I can, but I don't see how we're expected to not see this as supreme asshole behavior. Clearly, this episode was written by people who have never had one social insecurity in their entire life, and I can't tell if I'm envious of that. Mr. Krabs manages to somehow spin No SpongeBob Day as a positive thing since it's an entire day about SpongeBob, and SpongeBob is happy about this, so good for him, I guess. I'm still mad. But then the episode ends with everyone deciding to have a No Patrick Day, and SpongeBob pushing Patrick out of the bus was satisfying to me, at least. This ultimate ending is fine, I guess. Everyone else deserves to be abandoned too, not just Patrick. It would probably work better if I had found the general ending to be funny in the first place, but clearly I did not, so... The thing about Gone is that it could have been improved so very easily. Like, just properly pay off the horror atmosphere? Give a reason for everyone being gone that isn't mean-spirited as fuck? This episode could have just been a fun mystery/thriller with SpongeBob trying to find everyone. Yes, this would sacrifice the fun bits from earlier, but it would have prevented this ending. Or if we really want to keep the horror aspect going, which is what I'd prefer, there are still other ways they could have not done this ending. Like if this episode was something like Planet of the Jellyfish, and that's why everyone is gone, or hell, they could have even done something like the movie The Truman Show. I've never actually seen it, but I know the general plot. Like if it turned out that SpongeBob was being surveilled the whole time and this was some kind of social experiment, that could have worked too. Or if you just missed out on an invitation to some event or something. Like, it could have just been some weird, unexplained shit like Spongehenge or I had an accident. This episode would have been better by committing to the bizarre instead of this very failed attempt at comedy. Alright, let me bring it back now. The fact that Gone is so tainted by its ending actually pisses me off a bit, because the episode was so good for its entire runtime before that. Legitimately, without the ending, this episode would be an amazing tier easily. Easily. However, with this blatantly infuriating and insulting ending, this episode cannot go there. It can't even go in great. Nah, it's being sent 2 tiers down into good tier, where it comes into a score of 7.6 out of 10, and that's me being nice about it. The fact that it's still this high is being done out of respect to the excellence that was the first 8 to 9 minutes, but that ending got me heated real good. Just despicable. As always, I'll be ending this review with some closing thoughts of mine. I feel like these episodes had me all over the place. Contemplative and analytical, excited and engaged, and furious and indignant. So doing the review for these was fun for these reasons. I'm very aware that I'm taking the ending of Gone far too personally, but I mean, it's my review, so I can do what I want. What's the point of a review if I'm not subjective? So I feel justified in my subjectiveness, but I'm being serious. I really have no idea what the point of this was. Maybe it's because mean-spirited jokes like this just don't really work for me, so I can't really understand the drive to include jokes like this. I've read the discussions about this episode in the forum. Some people like the ending. It's not unheard of. I just don't really get it, but I respect it, I suppose. Alright. I think that's the only actual closing thought that I've got, so I'll just end the review here, and I'll see y'all in the next review.